And welcome to the show. Well, the New York City Department of Education recently made an announcement saying that it's launching a new plan to help students recover from learning loss due to the pandemic and its shift to remote learning. Gaps in access to school resources fall along racial and socioeconomic lines, and the gap has been magnified during virtual learning and virtual schooling. Students of color have suffered more learning loss than white students. Unequal funding at the state and local levels maintain well-resourced schools in mostly white neighborhoods, while those serving mostly Black, Latino, and low-income neighborhoods are also struggling to finance basic supplies. Well, schools are also predominantly Black or Latino, and students of color are also overrepresented and underserved in certain school populations. We're going to talk about this because joining us to share a little bit more about this discussion and give us more details is the Vice President of Admissions and Placement at Oliver Scholars, Mr. Mark Hall. And Mark, good to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here and sharing in this most important discussion. And I want to say that, when we first started prior to COVID, there was already this educational gap and there was this school to prison pipeline that really needs to be addressed. And now in the wake of COVID-19, a lot more of these things have become more and more exacerbated. So give us a little bit more about what you're seeing by way of educationally and how things are falling along racial lines.
Well, as you said in your opening, the COVID has just exacerbated what we already knew was an insidious problem. I read a recent report from McKinsey that predicts that the learning losses of Black and Latinx students will be twice the learning loss of their white peers. So the structural inequalities that already existed in the system have been exacerbated by this pandemic. I mean, we knew there was a digital divide, and now we're relying on the internet to provide educational access to students. So in that one brief example, if we know there's a digital divide and there's a lack of access to high-speed internet or computers. For example, in New York, I believe they took a survey and found out that over 300,000 students did not have access to one computer. And if you think about it now, in a home where 2 or 3 students might be in a home and each need their device to access their school, you can start to see how that exacerbates the problem that we're discussing today.
You're confirming what we were trying to report, because we've heard from students, we've heard from parents, and we've also heard from teachers that when it comes to certain populations, some still don't have computers, some still have inadequate Wi-Fi, and therefore some people are calling this a lost year. How do you feel about the call to make it called a lost year, given the fact of what we already know?
Well, from a lot of the students we deal with, we deal exclusively with Black and Latinx students who we recruit from the public school system, and then we follow them throughout their high school and college years. And the reports we're getting from them is that their virtual experience is not what they thought it would be. If you talk to a variety of families, they can count on their hand the number of times that their student actually is in front of a teacher for instruction. And we already knew that a reliance on homework or asynchronous learning only widens the achievement gap, right? Because it then relies on a parent being accessible to help the student sort of advance or engage. I joke with people a lot that, during this pandemic, I've become the dean for my kindergarten, my daughter who's starting kindergarten, because I have to make sure that she's engaged. But if I was an essential worker and was not in the home, then who would be able to do that, right? Who would help my daughter engage in this learning?
Yeah, and I don't think people sometimes take that at full value. That if you are an essential worker and maybe you're a single parent and your child is left to have to do some work, yeah, they may fall through the cracks. And when you talk about providing a much needed service, you're out there providing a much needed service, but your home is educationally falling down.
Right. So that's a catch-22 or like more than that, right?
Right.
And so I think in our communities where a lot of people are essential workers or frontline workers, I think that even further widens the gap that we're talking about. If you're not able to be home to assist in your child's learning, then we see what other places have been reporting is like a drop off in engagement, where a student will not be engaged on the online platform for weeks at a time. And so, that I think is quite literally a loss, right? And you could refer to as a lost year.
Right. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has recently released his educational plan, not without controversy. I want to get your thoughts on the mayor's plan and how do you feel that's playing out, and particularly in communities of color?
Well, I think just like everything else, people are waiting to see what the city is going to actually do for them. The DOE made an effort to get computers and Chromebooks and the like into the hands of students that would need them. But as you reported earlier, not everyone has them. They also haven't really addressed this issue of places not having reliable high-speed internet. So even if you have a computer, if you don't have reliable high-speed internet, how's it that you're going to be able to engage effectively in these courses? So I think it's really it's up to the city to actually step up and do things that people can see and can feel like they're solving their problems.
Yeah. And when we talk about education in New York City, obviously, you guys are doing a great job of pretty much working with African American, Latinx students and trying to raise them to that top bar. Excuse me, for somebody who's not so familiar with the work that you do, Oliver Scholars, give us a little background.
So we prepare talented and Black and Latinx students for success in top high schools and colleges. But really what we're trying to do is to help them become leaders. And so they have the ability to come back and affect their communities however they define them, right? And so what we do is we recruit seventh graders, and we're recruiting right now and looking for people to nominate talented seventh graders, high potential Black and Latinx students. They'll go through an admissions process with us and an initial scholar immersion program where we do a lot of enrichment, a lot of skill building to prepare them and help them access the education that we think their talent deserves. And after that initial 14 months, we follow them throughout high school and college, providing much needed support for them to help to take advantage of these educational opportunities.
When we talk about educational opportunities, how do you see things playing out right now, particularly for African American students of Latinx? Because when we look at colleges, when we look at admissions processes, we know that they're still being challenged today for equality and equity, getting to that next level. What are you seeing from your work with students and them being able to make that transition to higher education?
Well, our students are incredibly, incredibly successful. We just got some awesome early decision news last week where we're hearing that our students, after going to their high schools, are getting in early to schools like Columbia and Harvard and Williams. And so we know that when you give students, Black and Latinx students, the access to the education that they deserve and the support to make it through those environments, that we know that they're going to shine. And we hope, it's my hope that our students serve as an example of what can be done if you give students an opportunity. My real hope is like that a place like Oliver Scholars doesn't have to exist, right? Because everybody's getting to the access to the education that they deserve. And so that's really what we try to do with students, and are seeing incredible results for our efforts.
Yeah. You talked about students getting accepted to these top name schools and universities. They're doing a great job of really closing that achievement gap, right? And I think that when you see graduation rates and acceptance rates, this is the path to closing the achievement gap. But give us a more practical tool as to what we can do to better do that, because admittedly, there is this disparity that continues to widen and widen and widen, but you got a little secret sauce in there.
Yeah, I mean, our secret sauce is really a holistic approach to youth development, right? From the moment where we're trying to identify students. We're not just looking for students who have 90s across the board. We're looking to find potential to your whole application to see if we can see evidence of you having the potential or desire to succeed, right? And I think that holistic approach permeates through the rest of what the organization does. We not only support students, but we support their families because you can't make it in life as just an individual. And so when we accept a student, we know that we're going to have to take all that they experience into account when we're trying to support them throughout their educational process.
Yeah. So we got some parents who are watching right now, and they're saying, listen, Oliver Scholar sounds really cool. I like what they're talking about, the services that you provide for students. What's the process and the criteria for admission to be an Oliver Scholar?
So right now we're admitting seventh graders, and the process is very easy. And I would stress to them if they have a little time off during the holidays to just nominate. All they have to do is go to oliverscholars.org. There's a big apply button, enter their contact information, and we will get in touch with them and lead them step by step through the process. What we're looking for, like I said, are high potential, hardworking Black and Latinx students who really have a desire to excel. And hopefully by May, I'll be getting back in touch with these wonderful parents watching to offer them a spot in Oliver Scholars.
And then after they're accepted, talk to us about what happens from there. They're accepted into the program, and then what?
It's actually awesome that we get to talk about it on a show like this. Our students who might have been experiencing a learning loss last summer were in a 5-week rigorous academic program with us. So that's how we start. We have a 5-week rigorous academic program based focused on enrichment and starting to sort of to fortify the skills that we know that are necessary for success at some of these schools and in the world. And after that 5-week program, we move into the fall when the placement team starts working with families to figure out what kind of high schools might be the best fit. During that time, we also offer Saturday programming, which is a mix of academic programming and test prep. And then we end our scholar immersion program in the second summer with an additional 5 weeks of instruction, after which we celebrate our students as they move on to their wonderful high schools. And then there's a team that actually of scholar counselors that visits every high school and every student that we have that are our partners to make sure we're supporting our students during their process.
The importance of actually catching students at that particular grade level for entry, right? How important is that, and why is it significant to start where you start?
I mean, to tell you the truth, I wish we could start earlier, and catch more kids before that really formative time between your 8th grade and your 9th grade in high school. I think for us, there are a lot. We deal with a lot of partner schools where a major entrance point for them is the 9th grade. So most of the boarding schools we deal with, we deal with both boarding and day schools in the city. But many of the boarding schools we deal with have accept most of their students in the 9th grade. So from a strategic standpoint, we can find the most seats during that time. I wish we could start identifying students younger and work with them earlier and sort of make up some of these gaps that our program is designed to do. But obviously, if we can find some funders who want to support that initiative,
Yeah,
they should get in contact with me.
yeah. If you can start early, that'd be wonderful. But right now, the work that you're doing is incredible in terms of turnout, in terms of graduation, and how these young people are really going on to brighter futures, college acceptance, and the universities that they're attending. It's amazing to see the work that you guys are really putting out there and putting boots on the ground. What do you want people to know when we talk about education and social justice? Because the two words, somebody will say, nah, they really don't go along. But the reality is education is a huge part of social justice.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're entwined. They're the reason I do the work. I happen to luck into a quality education, and I don't want that to be the future for anybody. I think every student, regardless of where they were born, what they look like, what their parents do, should have access to a high quality education. And so, just from that standpoint, it is a social justice issue. It is something that children have a right to, and if they're being denied that right because of where they're from, what they look like, how much money they have, I think that's something we need to fight against.
Yeah, yeah, putting our voice to it. For people before we go, people want to get connected with Oliver Scholars. Go right ahead, help us to get connected.
oliverscholars.org. Right now, we're looking for nominations for seventh graders. Once you nominate and give us some contact information, my wonderful admissions team will reach out and start the application process. We also do have videos and information and more stats online for people to review on their own. But obviously, my contact information and my team's contact information is also on there, and we'd be happy to talk to anybody who has any questions about Oliver Scholars. But I can't stress enough: nominate, nominate, nominate. Nominations will close the first or second week of January, and we hope to be able to access as many students who meet our criteria as possible.
Mark Hall, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for coming and being with us here on the Social Justice Forums. Great work with Oliver Scholars. Good to have you guys back on the show. Take care and have an awesome holiday.
You as well. Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. All right. Well, we will be back. We've got more show coming up. Don't go anywhere. We'll return with the Social Justice Forums right after this.